Hey everyone, it's Bill here again, and as usual I'm getting loads of requests for playthrough tutorials, basically where I work on a piano improvisation and then talk you through some of the tactics and techniques I've used so that you can take it away and have a go at it for yourself. Now it's a little while since we've looked at any pop piano, so that's the style that we're going to focus on today. And to do that I've worked up a little chord progression for you. It's in F major, it's 32 bars long, it's in 4/4 time, and it's pretty straightforward. It's a kind of standard song chord progression. What I'll do now is improvise through it a couple of times and then talk about some of the chords and the effects they have and the kind of the underlying music theory, and then some of those individual techniques that I was using as I improvised. What I'll do is put the chords in subtitles as I play, but you will also find the full progression in a PDF that you can download using the link in the description text right underneath this tutorial. Right, as I said, we're in 4/4 time, but I'll probably play it quite kind of espressivo, pulling the rhythm about in places. Okay, so listen out for that. Here we go. So let's kick off just by having a think about some of the chords that we're working with there. Now all of the chords in the progression are what we call diatonic to the key of F major. What that means is they are all built using notes taken from the F major scale. There's the F major scale. And what we might call the common diatonic chords of the key of F are F, G minor, A minor, B flat, C, D minor and E diminished. And all of those chords in one form or another except D diminished crop up in that progression. Okay? Not all of them are straightforward, they're not all just played in their common form. So some of them are extended. So G minor often crops up as G minor 7. In various places the A minor and D minor chords, I was adding sevenths to them as well just to enrich the sound. And we also have that interesting kind of altered chord, the F sus4. Okay, which is a basic F chord, but with the third, the A taken out, and it's important that it's taken out, it has to be gone to give the chord its true identity, and that's replaced with a B flat. But that chord is still diatonic to the key of F because it's just using a different note from the scale of F major instead of its regular third. What we don't have are any non-diatonic chords. We don't have stuff like A major, you know, which uses a note that's not in the F major scale. So the fact that we're using exclusively diatonic chords is useful because it means when we are improvising we can use things like the F major scale, knowing that we're going to be pretty safe most of the time. What I'm doing with those chords really is not very much. I'm keeping them in a reasonably pure form. As I said, I'm adding the occasional seventh. In several places I was adding suspended ninths and fourths where they're not necessarily marked. Yeah, so it's on the C chord in the middle section, immediately after the D minor chord. Often I was putting a suspended second, suspended ninth in there just to give it a bit of character. But I'm not creating really rich and elaborate extensions in the way that I might do if we were playing jazz or cocktail or something like that. Rather, I'm aiming for a very kind of pure, clear sound, the kind of musical goal that I'm after here. And when you're improvising, you should always think about the musical end result that you're after. The kind of musical goal that I'm going for is simplicity and clarity of sound. I'm also kind of after a little bit of a kind of hymnal sound. I've talked about this before, but there's that very famous Elton John quote where he talks about when he's writing a song, if he's not sure what to do, he writes a hymn. Yeah, and an awful lot of pop piano and the sound that we identify with pop piano and ballad piano has its roots in church music. Okay, so I kind of had that clarity, that purity of sound in mind. So there weren't lots of really exotic chords going on there. Sometimes I was substituting things a little bit. So particularly when a C7 chord was marked, sometimes I was substituting that for something like G minor 7 with C in the bass, which is a very, very, very common substitution for a C7 chord. But I'll point that out when we go through the improvisation in detail. Couple of other things that are really worth bearing in mind. When you are hitting that F sus chord, when you have a go at this for yourself, be very careful about which other notes you include, because the F sus4 it's a very kind of unstable chord. It loses its identity very easily and reverts either back to an F major or up to a B flat. Okay, so what I tend to do when I've got an F sus chord is not play much else other than the chord notes. Okay, you'll also really find that the bass voicings in this progression matter. First chord, second chord, third chord, fourth chord is that B flat. Okay, now if we played that B flat with a B flat in the bass, it would have a very different effect, and I think kind of a deader effect. Let's just try it. Yeah, it's a bit too neat and tidy. It loses the tension too early. Yeah. Whereas if we do this, can you hear how we've got the kind of, as I say, that tension kind of continues, it builds through, and then eases, relaxes off onto the A minor chord. Yeah, so we've got in the bass all the way through those first four chords, which are repeated throughout the progression. We've got that, you might call it a pedal tone, to use a technical term. We've got that F in the bass ringing through, kind of building up to this knot of tension under the B flat before it's released to the succession of minor chords that follow it. So do focus on that. Think about your bass voicings. You will find as you play around with this progression that it's very easy to lose that kind of tension that drives it forward and to come up with a sound that is a bit too neat and tidy or a bit pat or doesn't quite fit. Okay, the best advice for dealing with that is to use your ears and think about what's going on. Okay, but bear in mind the kind of tension that runs through the whole kind of progression. Right, with that kind of stuff in mind, let's get get my improvisation back up on screen and have a look through it in detail. Okay, so here we are at the top of the improvisation. I've got my cup of tea on standby and somebody outside has started mowing their lawn just this second. Okay, so if you hear the sound of a lawnmower, it's not some kind of weird musical effect that I've added. It is actually someone mowing their lawn. But we will try and get past that as we work through the improvisation. What I'm going to do, as usual, is just play it through and stop it when I've got something interesting to talk about, or something that I think is interesting anyway. Here we go. That was just the first four bars. Okay, massively important point. I've said it before. when you're improvising on the piano, you can do an awful lot with not very much. Yeah? I wasn't trying to be busy or clever or fancy there. I've just got my two hands both in the same position pretty much on the keyboard, and they don't change from that position, or barely at all, for the whole first four bars. So the right hand is playing those chords, all of them in root position, and in the left hand they're all in root position except when we get to that B flat chord which has got the F in the bass. And that's kind of it. All the kind of musical interest there is just created from the rhythms that I'm playing. Okay, very classic thing in pop piano. It's all about the interplay of rhythm between the two hands. That's kind of something you need to get a feel for, but you'll find that it does come as you play around, as you improvise. The only other thing I did there kind of interest really is hit that top F while I was playing the F sus chord. Often when you're improvising this kind of middle register of the piano, there's middle C, just the occasional stab of a high note that just sings through, just add some colour, add some interest. Yeah, let's just hear that again. Here we go. So we go root position chords, and just that quick throwaway stab of the F, not making a big meal of it at all. There we go, and again. Nothing much at all. Also notice that when I was playing the F sus4 chord, I wasn't straying, as I said, I wasn't straying away from the chord notes. Far too dangerous to do that. If I dropped down to an A, immediately the chord would have lost its identity. It would have become a regular F chord. Sus chords are that unstable often. Yeah, you have to be really careful with them. Again, just use your ears and you'll know when you're getting that right and when you're getting it wrong. Okay, let's move on. Okay, now the interest there was coming from the kind of relative complexity of the left hand versus the absolute simplicity of the right. So I've just gone for a very simple melodic improvisation, which at its end is nothing more than F, G, F, G repeated. But underneath I've put kind of a little bit of broken chord with a little bit of scale in there as well. Now remember what I said earlier, the great thing about this progression is all diatonic to the key of F, so I know that my F major scale notes pretty much going to be safe grounds here. Okay, I'm starting and finishing my runs on chord notes, but I can fill in with the F major scale notes and I can be pretty certain they're going to sound okay. Let's just have a listen to that little bit again. Very simple. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, a little bit of a pause and on we go. Right, coming into some thicker chords here, swelling out and pulling back again. Listen to the dynamic there. One of the things I think is distinctive about this progression is that kind of underlying sense of tension that we first got with that F pedal tone in the first four bars, but there's a kind of I think it works best when there's a kind of sense of restrained power underneath, so it's clear and it's simple and it's straightforward, but there's this kind of burning intensity just trying to get out. And if I went mad, if I went fortissimo, it would spoil it, it would be gone. So what I'm doing is just gently going out and coming back and not getting too loud at all, but trying to give a sense of the power that the chord progression is giving me. Okay, let's just listen to that bit again. Here we go. So hitting those deeper notes a bit more, pulling back. There's one of those substitutions. Okay, so let's just see if I can land on it exactly. There we go. Instead of a C7 chord, which is in the progression, we've got a G minor 7 with a C in the bass. And that takes us to the F at the end of the first main section and into our D minor middle section. Oh, I'll just say a thing about that hand over there. When you put a hand over like that, often it's just to kind of look fancy, yeah, because it's kind of cool to do it. The reason I did it is I wanted to hit that G, I think it was, and I'd run out of fingers or I didn't feel comfortable with that finger, so it just seemed like a fairly natural thing to do, to go over. Some people would say that was showing off a little bit, really, maybe it is. It's kind of a satisfying thing to do though, so do try it if you ever want to hit a higher note up here with your left. It's kind of a fun thing to do. So we're now into the D minor section. Here we go. Over A. I'll just say something about that C chord there, because that's important. Now, I've been playing around with these chords a little bit, but that C chord I'm definitely not making a C7, okay? If I did make it a C7, it would be trying to shove me much too hard, trying to resolve much too hard back to an F chord. And I haven't got an F chord next, so I've got a B flat chord next. And you might think, oh, a C7 will work well because it shares the B flat note with the B flat chord, and no, it doesn't. A C7 there will be too strong back to the tonic. So I'm keeping it a clean a C chord without the C7, but I am decorating it a bit with the suspended ninth and the suspended fourth. Not in the progression, just a little bit of decoration. Again, it's about that typical kind of pop piano, that churchy, that almost kind of country music sort of sound that you get from doing that, okay? And the reason we do it a lot on the piano is it's so easy. If you're playing a root position triad, it's a really natural thing to do. Let's just play it again. So there's D minor, messing about on the C chord, B flat, F over A. Similar sort of thing again, pulling back to the C chord. F sus, again being very careful not to stray off the notes of F sus. I'm very wary about that chord. It's a good sound, but just be careful with it. A little bit of a fluff there, nothing too bad. Second time through, similar sort of thing. Bit of arpeggiation on the chord there. Do you see how I spread that D minor chord here? Let's hear it again. Okay, now in this kind of style of music, that is something that I would avoid doing too much because I'm trying to be restrained. Yeah, I'm trying to, as I say, express that sense of tension. And the arpeggiated chords like that, they're always kind of they kind of wear their hearts on their sleeves, if you know what I mean. It's beginning to push things a little bit over the top. We're getting a little bit romantic with a capital R, a little bit over emotional. So if you find yourself doing that a lot in this kind of improvisation, just pull back. Yeah, when you're doing anything musical on the piano, it's much easier to restrain things and give yourself room to go further out, okay, rather than going crazy either with volume or expression or whatever, and then you've got nowhere else to go, okay. So it's about kind of giving yourself options with the dynamics and the expression there. Let's carry on. Okay, I wish I hadn't made that C7 chord quite so explicit there, a little bit cheesy, a little bit too obvious and pat. Let's just hear it again. There we go. Yeah, not so keen on that. This happens when you're improvising. If you're improvising honestly, you will play bits and you think, yeah, that didn't quite work. Yeah. If you ever hear people play a really perfect improvisation or seemingly perfect improvisation, either they're a genius, or yeah, which does happen, or they've been doing a lot of practice. Okay, and maybe it's not as improvised as you think. Yeah. So if you're improvising, don't imagine it has to be perfect all the time, because it doesn't. Yeah. You know, if you're working stuff up for performance or recording or whatever, then yeah, you'll practice it a lot in advance. But when you're just noodling around on the piano like this, then imperfections will occur. The trick is to learn from them. Okay. Let's keep going. There we go, building out the volume, getting really rich. But then, do you hear that sudden pull back in the dynamics here? Let's just hear it again. Here we are, growing, pushing out. There we go. But then a quick pull back to quiet again. Do you notice how I talk about the dynamics and the expression as much as I talk about the chords and the notes? Yeah, there's an important lesson to learn there. Yeah, so that's quite a nice effect. You get loud, you grow, then suddenly quiet. Pull it back in. Yeah, lovely kind of expressive effect. Let's keep going. Okay, big arpeggio in the left there, and it came at a price because I fluffed it a little bit in the right because I was concentrating on it. Often happens, but again, lovely expressive sound if you get it right. Here we go again. There we go. Bit more arpeggio, similar to what I did first time here, but a little bit richer. Going deeper down the piano. Okay, a contrast. I'm nearly at the end. I have this deep, rich, booming sound, beginning to let go with the expression a little bit more, but now I'm pulling it right back to this, this much more delicate sound. Good music is all about contrasts. Okay, if it sounds the same all the way through, you're not doing it right. Yeah, you need to get the contrasts in there. But a more kind of definite sound this time. Again, do you hear that pull back just there? Quite pleased with that. Dun, dun, bum. Lovely and gentle. Yeah, I think that might be my favourite bit. Let's hear it again. Okay, good. I'm pleased with that. Okay, there we go. Nice kind of delicate ending. Okay, so your job now is to take that progression away and have a go with it for yourself at the piano keyboard. Just take it fairly steadily at first, just experiment with the sounds that you're making, kind of listen to what's happening. It's really important with a progression like this, with that kind of instability that I was talking about in that run of F chords, that you kind of listen to what you're producing, okay? Don't get too focused on pressing the right note, more important to listen to the sound. I actually quite like this progression. I just kind of dreamed it up at the keyboard the other day, but I do like it, and what I might do is just turn it into a piece of written music. Okay, so if I do that, I will let you know, and I will give you access to that at some point in the future. Right, what else is there to say? Yes, if you like pop piano, do check out my book, 7 Studies in Pop Piano, which, as long as you can read a little bit of sheet music, takes you through the whole style, really, from using 7 different pieces of music, starting really quite straightforward. Okay, and then each piece, each study has lots of notes and explanations and suggestions for improvisation and stuff like that. 7 Studies is proving really popular. It comes there are some audio recordings online, so you can also kind of measure what you're playing against kind of the official version. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button down there in the bottom right hand corner. Every time I point at this button, and I always get it wrong, it's about there. I'm going to guess this week. I think it's about there somewhere. Anyway, it's red and it said subscribe, so hit that button. Follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, check out my other books, How to Really Play the Piano. Oh, and also, big shout out, as usual, to my Patreon subscribers, www.patreon.com/Bill Hilton, crowdfunding website. If you support me on Patreon, even to the tune of just $1, $2 per tutorial, it really, really helps. It helps me fund my kind of piano playing activities, if you like. Plus you get loads of free stuff. You get free copies of free digital copies of the books and stuff like that, and Patreon exclusive posts. Okay, I'll stop wittering and let you guys get off and start playing. If you have any questions, as usual, just give me a shout, stick a comment in the comment thread underneath one of the tutorials, this one or any other, and I'll try to get back to you. See you again soon.